Welcome to the Lighthome Sustainable Design podcast series. We talk with the architects and builders about green design and homes that really suit the way we love to live. I'm Amanda Faulkner and I'm joined by Carolyn McFarland, one of our design ambassadors for her Design Ambassador's Choice this month. And it's a project by Born Blue Architecture, and it's a home that's in Seal Rocks in Sydney's, well, in New South Wales coast, sort of partway up really. So Carolyn, why did you choose this project as a demonstration of a light home?
Well, there's two main reasons why I picked it. One is that it's the Courtyard house design, and we talked about environmentally getting long, thin houses, single room depth, but sometimes that's not possible in the blocks that we get, particularly in sort of more traditional suburban size blocks. And this is a courtyard house. So what it does is that it puts all the rooms around the perimeter, and it has an opening in internal space where you can maximise the amount of light and ventilation in sort of a less space. And the other one is that it's in a fire zone, and it's a good way of showing how you can use materials and things like that to help build within things which have fire restrictions on them.
So, well, let's explain that further. And so how can you use materials to do that? And how did they do it in this home?
Well, you are restricted about the materials you can use, and a very good product to use is fibre cement sheeting. So this house is clad in fibre cement. Traditionally, in this sort of style, and this is sort of a beach community where you've had the fibre cement cladding with timber battens on it. They've used aluminium cladding. So you've got to use products that aren't going to burn. So traditional like timber and things like that. So fibre cement sheeting is really good. The metal as well, and also there are some hardwoods which you can use within fire zones, and one of the hardwoods they've used is blackbutt, and you're allowed to use that in a fire zone. They've also used aluminium framed windows, and they've put in they've used sort of fire screens as well, which are galvanised metal.
Okay, and so in particular, what do you think this architect has done particularly well? I know you've talked about its courtyard style design, but what really struck you that the architect had done brilliantly here?
Look, I think it's a really well-designed, well-planned building. It's really economical on its materials and its planning. It is a holiday house, so it is sort of freed up a bit in terms of what people expect. So a lot of you use the courtyard internally as for circulation and things like that. I think it's just really nicely built, and I just think that they've used economical materials, and they've used them in a really well put together way.
Can you explain that well put together way a little bit more? I mean, one of the things you notice when you look at the photographs, for example, of the front facade is there's a whole lot of batten detail, isn't there, on what looks like the fibre cement sheeting?
Yes.
A simple detail, but something that kind of works.
Look, it looks simple, but if you actually all those battens are out of metal, out of anodised aluminium for the fire rating. Also, if you look at the openings and how the openings work with the sheet dimensions and the windows and the entry in, the combination of materials. So they've used just plain fibre cement sheeting. They haven't painted it. It's sort of really in its raw state. And then they've used the timber to sort of offset that in terms of bringing some warmth and material. And internally, they've used a lot of colour. So there's the red and the green walls. But the floor is just plain particle board. It's not a timber floor. It's just plain particle board that's been finished. So, it's if you think about how you're going to use products in like that, and if you put them together well, then they look good.
So I guess part of the message there is it doesn't need to be complicated, does it? I mean, that's quite a simple palette of materials that you've described. And yet it's one that actually looks incredibly interesting when you look at the photographs of the home, doesn't it?
It does. And it's just that a sort of attention to detail, how things to go together. But it also is, you don't have to use expensive materials to get, a really good-looking house. I particularly like the bathroom, and I think the bathroom, again, being a holiday house, it's sort of open air, it's open to the courtyard, but it just uses, fibre cement as the wall sheeting, as for the countertop for the basins, but it still looks really stylish.
And so that's probably a great segue into talking about how this home is really designed to suit the Australian climate. I mean, the sort of outdoor component of the bathroom, but in particular the courtyard, the internal courtyard must be perfectly suited to that temperature where in Seal Rocks, I imagine.
Yes, it is. I mean, that's sort of up there where we are, and also the walls to the bedroom that face into from the sort of the bedrooms that face into the courtyard are just roller shutter doors. They're just galvanised roller shutter doors, and so you can open up during the night and sleep under mosquito nets, and it is just. And it opens up in the courtyard. There's no privacy issues because you're not being overlooked by your neighbours. You can see the sky, and it really suits, the sort of relaxed beach, Australian, way of life. They also, with this, they have the spaces in between. They've sort of, they've left out rooms, and there's points where you can see through the building to the block behind. That can be shut down again with the roller shutters. And there's spaces where they actually hang hammocks, and you can lie in there and get the breeze. And, it's a way of, in a suburban context, which, if you see the front facade of the house, front picture of the house, you can see the sort of, there's houses all beside them. You could be in this courtyard, no one overlooks you, and, you can do what you like.
Exactly. So just out of interest, how much, what would have been the land size that home was built on?
So the land size, I've got it just here. The land size was 400 square metres.
Okay. And so how much space runs on the sort of external perimeter of the home?
So the floor area, sort of the internal floor area of the house is 129 square metres, so very tight. It's a very small floor area, and the deck is 90 square metres, so quite a large deck, and you use the deck, as another room. And you use the courtyard as another room of the house, and this is what we can do in a climate like we have up on the mid-north coast.
And so in terms of, its cost to build, I mean, I'm making the assumption here that some of the planning that went into that, using, from what you've said, particular sheet sizes with particular window sizes, but also a fairly simple palette of materials, that it would have been a fairly cost-effective home to build?
Yes, it is a very cost-effective. It was a very cost-effective home to build. Again, a good way to keep down your cost of your house is by reducing your floor area because it is expensive. So, it is a holiday house, so it isn't a big house, but yeah, it just if you reduce down your palette of materials, you get back to the basics, and you can have something really well designed for a reasonable price.
And I think from what you've also said, the way that they've designed that courtyard inside, the internal courtyard, is quite different really from like an outdoor area that's on the back of a house, isn't it? It kind of really, as you say, it really does function as another room, and so makes 129 square metres seem a hell of a lot bigger.
Well, that's right. Well, it's another 90 square metres, so, it gives you sort of 210 square metres of house, and it's a way of dealing with being within, confines of other houses and neighbours. I mean, it's all lovely to have, you see houses on farms and things like that have no privacy issues of your neighbours where, that's not reality for a lot of people. And this is a really clever way of getting a good house design that gives you that really private open space.
Well, here's a tough and unexpected question for you, just off the cuff here. So, in your mind, what do you think is like the smallest lot you could build an effective, livable, internal courtyard-styled home?
It's not so much about the square metre of the block. It's about the shape of the block. So
Right.
a courtyard house is really suited to sort of a squarer shaped block, something that has a bit of width sort of, yeah, it's more square than rectangular, sort of long and thin.
Mm-hmm.
But, the way you design it, you can get down to quite small side areas. It's just how you plan it. But yeah, you need a bit of width in the two dimensions so that you can wrap um, rooms around.
Yes, fair enough. And so, just thinking about this home and thinking about how it might have been if it had been built from like a different set of materials, like heavyweight materials, brick, concrete block, something like that, would it have felt the same? Would you have achieved the same effect, do you think?
No, I don't think so. And this one, the architects, Born Blue, were really, really focused. This is sort of a beachside community. It's quite a small beachside community. The vernacular, what the traditional houses are all the fibro little cottages, and they wanted to fit in within that aesthetic and within the suburb or within the town.
Mm.
And I think if you built it with brick, it just would lose that airiness and lightness and that sort of beach feeling. So, I don't think in this particular, situation, in this particular little town, that it would have worked with a heavier weight.
Mm. It's certainly a home that looks like it really respects the things that are around it, doesn't it?
It does, and it also shows that it doesn't have to be like everything else
Yes.
around to use the same materials and to fit in.
Mm. So, just in terms of sustainability, I mean, I think any time that there's, streamlined construction and, less materials, then of course those things are inherently less impactful on the environment. But are there any particular sort of sustainability features of the home that you want to point out?
Um, Again, they have a solar system on the house, so that's interactive with the grid. They have water tanks, so they collect their own water. Again, my big thing is floor area. They have built, a relatively small house for families to come and to use it, and they've used the outdoor space as another room, and just the reduction of the palette of the materials, and really being clever about the materials and not you know just putting more and more stuff in because they can. They pared it back, and that's really what is sustainable, just using the materials that you need.
Mm. So, in closing, is there anything else that you'd like to point out about this home, Carol?
um, I just think it used the restriction of the fire being within a fire zone, and they have quite a heavy fire zone. I think it's actually in a what's called flame zone, which has to
Right.
have material that has to have shutters. You don't have to protect. You only have to protect certain faces of it. So that's what they did with the internal courtyard. It freed them up. It meant they didn't have to put the expensive protection on all the windows on the outside. They sort of shut it down and they closed it in, and internally they could open it up because the building protected itself. Um, I just think it's taken a problem or a constraint on the site, thought about it in a really clever way, and has come up with a beautiful plan and a beautiful building that doesn't have too many complicated materials to it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your choice, Carolyn, and we look forward to
So,
catching up with you next time.
all right, thank you very much.